the world. Come together and hear the call. Sing, children of the world. Islam will unite us all. Subhanallah walhamdulillah wallahu akbar. Subhanallah walhamdulillah wallahu akbar.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to this episode on Huda. We've been talking about our schools and what is missing in a series of programs which we have Dr. Mamdouh Mohamed here with us discussing what is missing in our schools today. Today, welcome of course our guest, well-respected guest, Dr. Mamdouh Mohamed. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you today, Doctor?
Alhamdulillah, wonderful.
Everything is fine?
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, good, excellent. So today, in each episode, we've been focusing on a slightly different aspect of our schools in the hope that we will benefit the viewers and encourage them to look for these sort of things that should be going on in our schools, and perhaps even try to get things started or mobilize these sort of things so that we can benefit our children the most. Now, Doctor, in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about teaching strategies. We've moved from kind of general material, and we talked about the school overall, how we're moving the school forward. We will come back to that later. However, in this episode, we're going to focus on teaching strategies, perhaps in the classroom.
Okay.
So we talked a little bit about the traditional methods of teaching, and we've said that perhaps this is more focused on, as you've termed, lecturing. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you mean by lecturing and the traditional ways of teaching, and if there is any weakness or benefit actually in that?
Yeah, the traditional way in the past was one person who would deliver what he has from the amount of knowledge that he has, and he would be speaking all the time, and all the students are sitting, trying to listen attentively to what he or she said. This is known as lecturing or dribbling. It's one-way talk. You will find the students are listening, and because of the new studies that proved that the focus span of a human being or student now is becoming shorter and shorter because of the lots of attraction that happen around the students. Something is running here, phone ring, somebody would enter the classroom and would ask a question or would take the attendance. There are lots of distractions, So lecturing usually you would find after some time students started to relax, and some of them lose their focus either by sleeping or by doing...
I think it's a very important point there, because this is a very one-dimensional style, isn't it?
One-way teaching.
One way. And as you said, we're competing a lot. Well, certainly teachers are competing against a lot of different entertainments. So perhaps, as you said, we need to change. Yeah,
we need to change, because there are many other methods that had been discovered or had been invented by other teachers, and they are more fruitful than this. And in fact, I wouldn't say this lecturing style or teaching style is really beneficial in some issues. And when you deliver specific knowledge, you need to say what the people don't know, so they would understand and they would take it.
So we're not saying here that there is no case for this one-dimensional style. There is no benefit. In fact, that there is some benefit to it.
Absolutely, yes. There are some benefits of it, because this is the way to disseminate knowledge. And most of the people until now, they get their knowledge and their information from the TV or from the radio, so they are passive learners. They learn, yes. But the problem of this is if they don't interact with this piece of information, right, the possibility of forgetting it is higher than if they interact with it, if they live it, if they, have their hands on it, if they test it. And this can be done in the classroom, but it cannot be done if you are watching the TV, right? That's why working with the internet, working with computers is more effective than listening to a lecturer or somebody who is speaking on the TV, because you are passive. Once you start participating and making the situation interactive, the possibility of having this knowledge remaining in your brain for longer times is higher than just becoming a passive learner.
Okay, yeah, I understand. So we're saying that we need to increase the participation.
Absolutely. We need to make our classroom more interactive. We need to make a balance between teacher's talk and student's talk. It's the concept of the teacher-centered classroom is moving now to student-centered classroom. This may be strange for the traditional teachers, specifically for the old teachers, or some teachers still in some countries, they think that the teacher is the center of everything, where he disseminates knowledge and everybody is passive. This is good for some subjects, but not in everything. You cannot be good in science without having hands-on. You have to use your hands to make experiments to see by yourself what's going on. It's not enough to know the equation or to see the teacher is explaining it. You have to put your hand and to know how it works.
Yeah, I certainly remember from my days of learning, and of course from my days of teaching as well. Getting interaction, it makes things stick in the brain.
Yeah, it makes you vivid. You make your brain
it makes it come alive, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely, it's alive.
Those were the best science lessons, weren't they? The one where a big explosion happened. You never forget that.
Yeah. Even in languages, for example, the role playing, when you ask the students to play some roles. One of them is a waiter, another one is a guest, and one of them is a customer, and one of them is a cashier, and all this. So when you act something, it means that you live it, or you put it from the theory into practice. You try to make the classroom a live or a real-life situation for the students, so their learning increases and becomes deeper than other things.
Okay, what about in a subject like, for example, maths?
Yeah.
How would that translate?
Even in math, there is a difference between the teacher who is all the time standing in front of the board and explaining everything, and he is writing, and all the students are copying what he or she is writing, and a situation of that when the teacher gives them some problems to solve them. I need you to measure this classroom. And another student or another group of students would be asked to measure the height of the classroom. And I've seen that some teachers are asking the students to measure the pole of the flag. And she gave them a tip, for example, one part of the rope of the flag, and this is measured in such a way, so how can you measure this rope? I have seen teachers who train their kids, or the students, to go home and measure the measurement of the suits of their family members for each one, for the father, for the mother, for the sister, for the brother, so they would know. Now this is practical math. It's so important in our life to see the shapes by themselves and to see the difference between the circle and the triangle, and instead of the teacher just talking in there on the stage and everybody is listening.
Yeah, I remember from my point of view in maths particularly, I had a love for it somewhere, but it was so boring just sitting there and just doing calculations on the board. If someone had just shown me how to apply it, perhaps I would have been a bit better at maths than I am.
You know this table of the Japanese that they invented when they tried to count by these rows? So it's something practical, so they change just the abstract figures into something tangible so the kids can do it. Even in most of the shops in Japan and other countries, you would find this table that looks like a rose, right? So they use it to count, to make the counting. Yeah, so which is something, whatever it is practical usually is very beneficial for the human being, especially in subjects, scientific subjects.
Okay, so you mentioned this idea of moving the focus from the teacher onto the student. Yeah. And what sort of activities? I know you've mentioned before collaboration.
Collaborative work.
Yeah, collaborative work. Yeah. That seems to be a fairly important part of this.
Yeah.
Can you just explain what you mean by collaborative work? Before
I do that, I would say, talking about teaching strategies, there are many studies that prove that the teacher who uses a variety or a wide variety of teaching methods would be able to address different needs of the students, because we learn differently. Some people learn by hands-on. Some people learn when they listen and take notes. Some people learn when they discuss. Some people learn when they ask questions. Some people learn better when they play the role of somebody else. So these are variety of teaching methods because they address the needs of the students. That's why the more variety of teaching lessons a teacher provides, the more possible that all the students will learn, because each group of students or each individual student would learn differently from the other. So using a wide variety of teaching methods opened the door for all the students to learn better.
Okay, can you just give us a little bit of an idea for the viewers, and certainly me, what you mean by different learning techniques? Different learning styles. Like, for example, kinetic. There's the idea of the kinetic learner, isn't there? What are the different kind of styles that teachers need to be aware of in the classroom?
Yeah, this is teaching methods, because teaching, as I said, that I learn better when I practice, when my hands is on, right? So when you give me an opportunity in the classroom that, for example, in a language lesson, you allow me to speak, to play the role of somebody, right? So this means hands-on, I am practicing it. Some people learn better when they touch the shapes, the triangle and the circle and all these things, better than when they see it visually. Some others would learn when they see visually.
So this is called a visual learner, is that right?
Visual learner, someone is visual.
So the first is the kinetic learner, which is the one who moves and who uses the body to move and practical.
It's without going into specifics. What I'm trying to say that's why now we have resource rooms. That's why you go to a resource room for science or a resource room for language, you find a lot of media things, a lot of things that would help the teacher present her lesson or his lesson in a way that's different from the traditional way that the teacher is carrying the book, reading, and everybody is listening. And after a few minutes, you will find everybody is losing the concentration.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
So having this, and it's not necessarily that the teacher would do this in every lesson, but it's the nature of the exercise or the nature of the lesson or this particular passage that requires this. For example, reading a book, for example. If the students read the book at home, reading stories at home, and they come to the classroom, and each one of them would present the story that he read or she read in the way that the student himself likes to present it. I've seen many examples of this.
Okay, just before you carry on, we're going to go for a short break for this program. We'll be back very shortly. We'll see you after the break.
Women around the Prophet. What do you know about women in Islam? Do you know the role that women played in Islamic history? Sheikh Ismail Rafai will relate the stories of the Prophet's wives in the program, Women Around the Prophet.
Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, may Allah be pleased with him, the person he decided that this Quran should stay with and be left with was none other than our mother Hafsa bint al-Khattab. So this whole Quran was left with her. This is a great trust. Khadija bint Khuwaylid. She is afqah nisa'il ummah. She's the most knowledgeable of this ummah. Because she is my mother, your mother, and the mother of all the believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Women Around the Prophet in Ramadan on Huda TV.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to this episode of Our Schools, What is Missing. Now, before the break, we've been talking with Dr. Mamdouh Mohamed, looking at the teaching strategies in the classroom and how we can get the most out of our students. Dr. Mamdouh, before the break, we were just discussing a various number of teaching strategies and the benefits of having a variety of teaching strategies. Can you just recap for us what you were saying?
Let me put it in a different way. We have different senses. We have the sight, right? So some people are more oriented to sight, so they learn by seeing things. So when they see things, they learn a lot of things, right? Some people are, depending on their listening skill. So when they listen a lot, right, they learn by listening. And this was the traditional way. It's still the most effective one, because even in the Quran you will find all the time the listening comes before the seeing. In the sam'a wal basara comes before, So because you can learn a lot even if you don't see, but it's not vice versa. If you don't listen, right? If somebody is deaf, right? So he would the ability to learn is very limited. So still people learn a lot from it. Some people learn by the sense of touching. When they touch things, when they feel things, they see the differences. That's why it's very important to use all these senses, especially for young kids. That's why we let them play with the sand, different shapes and different activities, that they use all their senses to develop these senses. So this is basically, the more you address all these senses, the more the opportunity for the students to learn more and more. And I think that the whole school, every school needs to focus on this. Does the teacher also only teaches and the students are passive learners? Or do they really have opportunities to manipulate things that they have, to use their visuals, to use, other different ways, like discussions, like hands-on, like all these things. This is, in summary, the teaching strategies and the learning strategy of the students, and the possibility of having, these meeting, this is very high. So this group of students who learn by this way, so they would meet this teaching strategy. So it would be very good, best fit for every group of students or for every individual students if you make a variety of teaching. But if you use one method only like this, and you have students with different learning styles, so now it's only one person or one group is going to learn, and all the other groups, as you see, that they are not going to benefit as this particular individual.
So one very important part of these variety of techniques, as we were mentioning before, is collaborative and cooperative learning. And that's something which is, can we say, a fairly new phenomena in the classroom. For some.
For some people, yes.
Can you just tell us...
it has been going on, I think, since the creation of Adam. But now the importance of it becomes clearer for all people.
Okay, so what exactly do you mean? That's the thing.
Now, when you make group work, when you assign this group of students a task, and they work together to solve it, first of all, it should be challenging for them. It should be ahead of them, one step ahead. So there is a problem, and they need to solve it. Now, they start the discussion. The answer, the solution is not there. They don't know it yet. But after discussion, you give an idea, and I give my idea, and the third one would listen to the two ideas. He would come up with another idea. That's what they say, the marriage of ideas. Right. So these ideas marry together, so something come up with a newborn baby, a newborn idea would come from the discussion. The solution was not there. But because of the discussion, they enrich each other and they would come up with the solution. It's a very important thing, because the world nowadays is very complex and very complicated. You cannot rely upon yourself by yourself. Now, cooperative work, and that's why, for example, big companies, when they hire the expertise from everywhere in the world, and those experts put their heads together, they produce something that was not there. They invent. That's why you find these companies make a lot of invention nowadays. In the previous times, it was the individual who used to make the invention. Now, it's not that. It's the group of people, group inventors sitting together, discussing, and they come up with the solution, and they make it an invention. This is exactly one of the tasks, one of the activities we need to enrich our classes with.
Okay, what's the basis Islamically here? I mean, is there any basis?
There, of course. Either by action or by the statement. In the Quran itself, you'll find the word ta'awanu. Work together, work collaboratively, yes. Because this means that if you work individually, you cannot get it by yourself. Nobody can build a skyscraper by himself. We've never heard about it. It's a possibility that he or she can do that, but it takes definitely long time, and it is not as professional or as perfect as it had been done by 100 people. And you can see this, for example, in authoring books. There's a difference between a book that's authored by 20 authors. Each one of them is specialized in a specific area, right? And one teacher or one person, one author, authors one book. And you see most of the textbooks that are used in schools, usually they are not a single person authorship. It's just a group of authors, a group of people working together to produce this beautiful thing that benefits hundreds, if not millions of people. So this is the importance of, we are lacking this in it. What's happening is that everybody would say, I did this. We are moving from the I to the we, something that's very important for the whole world. It's we have done this rather than I have done it. You don't have neither the time, right, or the power to produce something so unique nowadays by yourself.
And Doctor, in your experience, how effective has this been in the development of children? I mean, what have you seen in the
It's
implementation?
really something amazing. We've seen very good examples by students. They're doing some projects. I've seen some school, yes, there is a problem. They give them a problem like, okay, there was an accident here, and we don't know who is the killer. They give them the scenario, and they work like a police crew or something like that, and each one of them is responsible, and they discuss issues together to find who did that. This is in reality the situation.
In what lesson was this?
I think it was critical thinking. It's one of the activities in a classroom that the teacher wants to develop the group work among students to find the solution for the problem. And this is written in many scenarios. Even the books of fiqh, you find as questions like this. A person left his country on that specific airplane at that time, and he headed for the east. Again, it's the sun, and when he reached there, it was Maghrib time. The books of fiqh are full of these examples, and they enrich the brains of the people to think. And that's why the fuqaha, they say that فَقِيهٌ وَاحِدٌ أَشَدُّ عَلَى الشَّيْطَانِ مِنْ أَلْفِ عَابِدٍ. They say that one faqih, one person of reasoning and understanding, is more difficult to be deceived by the shaitan than 1,000 abid, a person who is just doing the ibadah blindly without reflecting upon the context, without reflecting upon the reasons that led to this. Yeah, so this is very important to be faqih.
Such is the value of the scholar.
Oh, this is the value of the scholars. They are fuqaha because they try to understand the situation. That's why, and this is something sometimes the layman does not know. The faqih sometimes gives you a fatwa that's different from the fatwa that he gives to her. Why? This is a good faqih, by the way. This is a good faqih. Why? Because he understands that when he gets the whole context of your situation, he finds that there are some difference in your situation than the differences in her situation. Because of these slight differences, so he modifies his fatwa accordingly. In other words, it's customized to your situation.
So we're saying that the benefits and the effects of the collaborative work allow the children to think through different situations, which have come from their colleagues.
Their colleagues.
So they
get ideas from each other. They share ideas.
So that's enriching their ability.
Enriching their abilities and stretching their brains. Stretching their brains. This is one thing. Of course, there's something called independent work. We need to develop it in our students, but still we need that. So that's what when you have a variety of activities, you can develop all these things. You can train the students how to work by themselves, individually, independent work, and at the same time how to let them work with other people successfully.
Okay, so we will come on to independent work in a later episode.
Yes, later we can talk about that.
Let's just say this is okay. We've said that this has been going on for a long period of time, somewhere in the world.
Everywhere
this
in the world.
Collaborative work.
Yeah.
What are the difficulties in implementing this sort of thing in the classroom for the teacher, and what about the difficulties for the student?
Yeah. The difficulties for the teachers, the barrier of the teachers, especially when they become old and when they don't get a lot of training, is that they fossilize. Everyone usually, when you present something new to him or to her, they don't get it easily. For example, the new machines, when computer came, it was very difficult for old people, in the 50s, if they are 50 years old or 60 years old, they didn't want to use the computers. When you come to the new generation, the 20s and even the teenagers, they got into it very quickly, right? It's because when some person grows up, he or she fossilizes. Why? Because he was not trained continuously, because one of the important effects of training is that it makes a human being flexible, receptive to new things.
So for the student, I can see this is quite easy for him. He's young, he's willing to be trained, and he will accept these ideas perhaps more easily. What about the teacher, getting the teacher to
the same thing?
You might say he's a bit fossilized.
Yeah, this is in fact what's happening. And this is the responsibility of the school. Mm-hmm. If the school is aware of its goals and wants to do a good job, they start giving training to the teachers, continuous training, once a week, once a month, but they keep them trained, because when they are trained, they get new things.
Okay, Doctor, I'm going to have to stop you there.
Okay.
We've come to the end of another episode of Our Schools What Is Missing. Thank you very much for joining us, to all our viewers. Thank you again to Dr. Mamdouh. We will see you again as soon as possible, inshaAllah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Oh, sing, children of the world, come together and hear the call. Sing, children of the world, Islam will unite us all. Sing, children of the world, come together and hear the call. Sing, children of the world, Islam will unite us all. Subhanallah walhamdulillah wallahu akbar. Subhanallah walhamdulillah wallahu